Yeah, that's a great question. I do find threatening behavior works pretty well. If you threaten the customers, some of them will buy under pressure. I'm so kidding. I'm really kidding. But let me put the question back on you first. If you asked a whole heap of salespeople how they think they can improve their closing, especially their closing rates, what do you think they would say? See, most salespeople would say, I need to see more people. But I would challenge that massively because it's not always the case. Say, for example, they've got data on their actual showroom foot traffic. If for every 10 test drives, they're only closing one deal, then it doesn't matter how many people they see really, unless it's hundreds extra, it's not really going to make any difference to how many cars they close and sell. Do you get what I mean? Whereas if everything's in line, then of course closing skills and improving that is a must. So the best closing skill, in my opinion, is doing the road to the sale properly. And that means, have you closed off on rapport? You've got really good relationships and people feel at ease. Have you qualified exceptionally well? I'm not talking about just needs and wants. I'm talking about, do you know who your customer is? Do you know their circumstances? All that kind of stuff. Have you given a tailored presentation? All that really important things. And that leads to usually a much simpler close, much easier. So that would be the first thing, road to the sale. Second thing I would say is, do you think salespeople often ask or don't ask for the order based on their perception of interest from the customer? So for example, if the customer doesn't sound that interested, they're not giving buying signals, do you think most salespeople still ask them for the business? In most cases, not. So my next little tip is to ask everybody that you speak to for the order, because some people don't look excited. Some people aren't that excited in general, but they still buy cars. So the more people you ask, the more cars you'll sell, 100%. And if I was to give an extra answer to the question, I would say it's interesting because in Australia, the average car is sold after the order's been asked for 3 to 4 times. So we not only need to ask everybody, but we also need to be persistent with how we ask and ask multiple times. But the challenge is, A, most people don't do that, salespeople I'm talking about. But secondly, in my opinion and experience, most salespeople don't even know 3 to 4 closing techniques. So you have to learn these techniques from an expert, firstly. And then secondly is what I call, you have to put it into practice, but not just any type of practice. It's what's called purposeful practice. So it's practicing how, let's say it's a word track that was taught. It's practicing it verbatim, word for word. Because what often happens, I've seen this so many times, is the salesperson might have learned a great strategy or a great word track. They go to use it, but because they're not confident, and why would they be? It's the first time they're using it. But because they're not confident or they can't remember it, they actually change it slightly and it doesn't have the same power. And they don't get the outcome. It's a completely different outcome. So they go, this doesn't work, and they never use it again. So classic example would be, you know the difference between open and closed questions, yes? Now, if a salesperson said to a customer, if they said right at the closing part of the sale, they said, Mr. Jones, can you be flexible on the price that you're offering? Let's say the customer's made an offer on the vehicle or a changeover figure, and they say, can you be flexible with that? What's the customer going to say? Well, in 99.9% of the cases, they'll say no. Why? Because it's a yes-no question. Can you be flexible? And we tend to go to the line of least resistance, which is the no. Whereas that's not what I would have taught. I would have taught something along the lines of changing that word can into how. So for instance, it could be, how flexible are you, Mr. Jones? Or if you've given them a figure and they've given you another offer, Mr. Jones, how close to this figure can you get? So now it's not a question of can Mr. Jones do it or not, it's a question of how flexible is he? Game changer, completely different outcome, and that's what you get when you learn lots of different strategies on how to close deals. So hopefully that answers your questions. Keep the questions coming in. I really like this. It's awesome. Hopefully it's helpful. Whilst we're doing this improved dealership performance series, I highly encourage you to ask a lot of questions. If you simply put hashtag Ask Adrian in the comments below, we'll be in touch. And if you've got a question around performance, could be sales, could be management, could be service, could even be finance, anything that's performance based, not technical, not product, but anything that can help you in reference to the performance in your role or your team's role. If you have one, simply put hashtag Ask Adrian below and we'll be in touch.